But the amount of money is just so overwhelming. Like if you take a college playoff game, the TV rights are 84 million. At the gate's going to be another 20 or 30 million. And if you're generating 120 million for 3 hours, shouldn't the people on the field participate in the money?
Welcome to Portfolio Players, presented by E-Trade from Morgan Stanley. I'm Dan Roberts, and I've got Bruin Capital's George Pyne. George, thanks for coming in.
Good to be here, Dan. How you doing?
Great. So let's start this way. You started Bruin in 2015. I don't want to give you too much credit, but let's just say it was very prescient because it was a sports-focused investment firm, and now you're seeing those crop up all over the place. What did you see then that others didn't see, and what do you see now?
I saw a lot of opportunity at IMG in terms of the ability to invest in sports businesses. So I thought we could take it and run it Bruin, and that's kind of what we've done.
There's something happening now in a broad sense, and that is a rush of new investment into sports. And I don't just mean, sports-related companies, although there is that, and that's what you do. But in terms of owning a stake in a team, suddenly you're seeing not just private equity and family offices, but celebrities, athlete investors. Everyone now realizes that they want to own a piece of a pro sports franchise. Why now?
Well, I just think it's been durable over 30 years, right? The franchises have appreciated in value and double-digit CAGRs, right? And so there's a scarcity of asset, something that's been predictable over 3 decades. It proved out to be a good investment for people.
Is it a guaranteed investment?
Well, I don't know if it's guaranteed, but the other part about sports is it's been pretty recession-proof. So it's pretty durable in recessions. It's benefiting from media rights. It's one of the few last things on earth that aggregates tens of millions, in some cases billions of people together about something they're passionate about. So that also is kind of a good trend. I mean, and also when you think about the commoditization of entertainment, right? You can't commoditize sports. And so it reinvents itself. There's winners, there's losers, there's villains, there's good guys, bad guys. It really is a reality television.
Let's talk about media rights. I love talking to you about this stuff and the streaming and where things are headed. Pick your example, whether it's the NFL fragmenting its games more than ever before by parceling out games to streamers, the new NBA deal, the $77 billion, and Amazon, crowds out TNT. Are we headed to a place where it's no longer really an advantage to have the broadcast reach and we could just see a whole season from one of the big leagues go to a streamer?
I think eventually you could see that, right? Why do I think that streamers are going to lean in? Sports over indexes in advertising. Advertising is a big growth area for the streamers. So to me, it's logical to see the streamers continue to invest in sports because of the advertising success sports typically has.
Were you shocked by Amazon getting the third NBA package over TNT?
Kind of makes sense with the volume of games the NBA has. The other thing Amazon has, and all these guys have, is they know who's watching, they know for how long, they know the psychographics and demographics of the consumer, and that in itself is valuable to them. And later on, as time evolves, I think that's where the leagues will be headed, right? Next evolution of sports will be the lifetime value of the consumer, and the leagues and teams monetizing that relationship.
Years ago, I had you on a panel on stage for a Yahoo event. And what's funny is at the time, it was you, me, Jay Williams.
I remember.
And at the time, we were talking about the NBA and a little bit controversial thing they were going through, and that was everything happening in China. And, the NBA has sort of found itself in political controversy. Now, fast forward this season, not so much the political controversy, but just ratings. There's been a lot of navel-gazing ratings analysis about the NBA. There was a dip to start the season. As we tape this, my Celtics played the Lakers, and the ratings were so good.
Yeah.
That's right, our Celtics, thank you. Played the Lakers. The ratings were so good that maybe there's not a ratings dip story. We're back to almost even with last year. But there has been a lot of very valid, I think, questioning about maybe it's the product on the court. And again, this is a league that just got a $77 billion deal. What do you make of where the NBA stands right now? Is there anything to change? Any page that Silver should take from any of the other commissioners?
Well, I think that Adam, with his play-in tournament, is open to a reinvention of the product. So I don't think you can sit there and say it's the status quo at the NBA. I think they've been innovative in their leaders, and I think it's a little too early to draw any conclusions on whether ratings are up or down. I think the NBA will still remain to be a very strong product, not only in the United States, but around the world.
When we talk about streaming and media rights, that's been a huge focus of yours at Bruin. Among your exits was this company, Delta Tray, which was an Italian sports streamer. Talk to me a little bit about kind of the arms race for rights and how hard it is to get live rights. I mean, part of this is I think some businesses, they start outside the U.S. because that's where you can actually still get some rights. You know, if you want to try and get NFL, NBA, that's going to be very hard.
We were believers as streamers, not only in Delta Trade, but Two Circles. And even we own a company called TGI that does virtual signage, which really is good one-to-one advertising. You and I are going to be able to watch a game or a match, and I'm going to be sending you ads, one for you and one for me. Your Celtics ads will be different than my ad. You know, that's really, really kind of the future. But these companies typically aren't rights holders, but they're providing services to the rights. But that's exactly, you know, where I see it. You know, we do a lot of work with the NHL. When you look at the NHL, they have the ice, the boards, the glass. Like, why, if I'm a Boston fan, should I look at New York ads? Or if I'm a New York fan, why am I looking at Boston ads? The answer is you shouldn't. So I think this whole thing is going to be going to a one-on-one relationship with the consumers. And of course, the streaming companies will be right in the middle of that. A
heavy portion of your portfolio is outside the U.S., right? The companies that Bruin has invested in. How did that end up happening?
You know, it was accidental, but 75% of our invested capital is headquartered outside the United States. We have 8 companies, has 4,000 employees. We're in people on the ground in 24 countries, do business in 71. The only continent we don't do business in is Antarctica. So very global.
Not yet.
Sports is global. And, you know, we buy lower middle market private equity firms and really grow them. And one of the things we do, we're able to open up markets. So if you want to go to Australia, you want to go to Asia, you want to go to America, you want to go to Europe, we have relationships in those markets that really can help these companies. They're running IMG, which was operated in 30 countries. I did that for 9 years. You know, we have a network now at Bruin. We have 14 Bruin advisors all around the world. So if you want to know something in Germany or Spain or France or Australia, you know, I'm one phone call away from finding out what's going on the ground. And for these companies that, you know, like Delta Trade, like a Two Circles, like TGI, that's enormously valuable.
You talk about going to events all over the world. A big exit for you guys was On Location. You guys were one of a few key investors in that, and Endeavor bought that quite recently, 2020, for something like $600 million. I mean, that was just a huge deal, and On Location has really grown. You know, I think of it in my head as just NFL On Location, but of course it's a lot more than that now. Talk about that business and, you know, why that's been such an attractive business for Endeavor WME.
Well, when we bought it, invested in it, we ran out of our office. You know, we invested in that company with Bruin Capital. We had 4 employees, right? And, you know, when we left, it had 550 employees. And when we started, we had 1 client, the NFL. When we left, we had 150. And they've really, Endeavor's taken that and really globalized it with the World Cup, the Olympic Games. You know, they have a pipeline of relationships and have done a fantastic job, and it really is the best in the world at what they do.
Let's talk a little bit about, you know, this kind of question of which sports can survive the cord-cutting era. You know, because you mentioned NHL. We just saw the NHL Four Nations, which was a huge hit, and that was a new format. You mentioned NBA with the In-Cup tournament. You know, my take on all this is like these long seasons that kind of exhaust people. You're going to have to keep innovating and breaking these up with special one-off events. You know, you're a big football guy, and the NFL is sort of the last remaining league where it can just keep doing what it does. Now, even the NFL, it's actually going the other direction, it's adding games, trying to add regular season games. But it's the scarcity in the NFL's case. You know your team plays just once a week. For the other leagues, what can they do to kind of survive this distraction onslaught?
Well, I mean, I think Major League Baseball is a good example of someone that's made adjustments to their game, right? The pace of play, shortening the game, was really embraced by the fans. Again, the NBA doing the play-in tournament, that was an example of trying to reinvent their game as well, make it more interesting. So I think you can either sit there and do the same old thing, or you can innovate. I don't think you can sit and do the same old thing. I think you have to keep innovating. Especially when you think about the globalization of sports, right? And through technology, people can watch things all around the world. If you're running a global sport, you really have to innovate. Golf's an example of a sport that's been disrupted through innovation and capital. We'll see how that all plays out. You have the TGL. You have LIV. I mean, you know, these things are moving. And, you know, when people say you can't do it, I would just say, look at the UFC. I mean, 20 years ago, what was the UFC? The UFC is fantastic. So, like, hey, it happens.
Yeah, there's, of course, a number of challengers even to the UFC now. And the question is how many different, you know, fighter leagues we can have. Same with golf. I mean, a lot of these upstart leagues that want to get in.
Well, I look at it kind of like, golf is a global sport, but was run with a regional focus. And so what happened was somebody had a global vision and a lot of capital, and the guys running golf had a regional focus and were undercapitalized, and they were disrupted. And I think the key thing there is that other global sports can be disrupted if you don't have a capital plan and you don't view it, globally. So if I were running a league or a federation, what that would mean to me, two things. One, how would I view capital? I'd look at capital as how can I differentiate myself from my competitor and reinvent myself? And two, defensively, where's my flank open, right? And so I think when the Live Golf and that whole PIF situation came about, I think it kind of changes sports, forever. And I don't think you'll ever go back. It doesn't make it good or bad. It just means it's changing because people are going to invest. People see the opportunity. They see the ability to transform businesses. And that's going to keep accelerating, not decelerating.
Well, everyone's busy pointing out how Live is not as, successful as the PGA Tour. And yet I like your take that it has, forced the other to innovate and get better. I mean, but is it always going to have to be Saudi money that drives this?
No, there'll always be. It's just capital. It's somebody with a lot of capital viewing something, an opportunity, and they took advantage of it. And I think you'll see more and more of that, not less.
Let's talk about, football when it comes to the college level, which you have a lot of experience with. I mean, you played in college. You got two sons who both played as well. The NIL mania and the kind of Pandora's box that has been opened is really fascinating to us. At FOS, we cover it very closely. I mean, from the rise of collectives, players being able to put their face and likeness on anything, and the amount of money there, players leaving schools suddenly because they say, I wasn't given the NIL money I was promised. What do you make of all this right now? It's really messy.
At a high level, you have an evolution, borders perhaps on a revolution, but the sport has to evolve the same way the Olympic Games evolved, right? People said, how can you pay Olympic athletes? The last time I checked, in Paris, the Olympic Games are pretty good. And so I think college sports is going through some significant growing pains and trying to figure out what it is and how it should operate. It's having those growing pains because it's enormously valuable and enormously successful. And so those things have created their own complication. And right now, there's a lot of disruption going on.
As the parent of a current college athlete, right?
Yep.
Do you generally fall on the line of let them earn whatever they can, free market?
Well, I was kind of always a traditionalist, right? But the amount of money is just so overwhelming. Like if you take a college playoff game, the TV rights are $84 million. At the gate's going to be another 20 or 30 million. And if you're generating 120 million for 3 hours, shouldn't the people on the field participate in the money? I mean, I estimate college football generates somewhere between $6 and $8 billion. Should the people playing the game participate? I mean, I think that's what it's evolved to. Initially, I think the courts were deferential to the college model, but the money is just so overwhelming that, the system has a chance to evolve. Now, it's so overwhelming, it's because people really like it, and the product's fantastic. But how the money's shared and how it's all operated needs to be reinvented, and right now it hasn't been figured out yet, and it's going through some real growing pains. So that'll create opportunities for some, disadvantages for other, and I'd say general disruption at the moment.
NIL is one half of it, and the other half that I think is causing this sea change is conference realignment. It's funny, we had Tony Godsick in here, who is Roger Federer's agent, and his son plays tennis at Stanford. And, you get these California schools that now are switching to the ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference. So you got, he said, my kid is flying to play at UVA. And that seems crazy. I mean, he said something like, when is he going to study? And I thought that was funny because aren't we way past that? Like, yes, they're students, but, it's the sport is coming first. So.
Well, I mean, if you're being honest, all sports aren't equal anymore, right? It's really primarily football, to some degree basketball. They're the ones generating the revenue. But it's sad to me to see the Conference of Champions, the Pac-12, 100-plus year conference go away. I don't think that's good. By the way, USC playing UC Davis and all those local California colleges getting to play UCLA, and that's good, right? So that whole thing is being disrupted. And, honestly, somebody needs to step in with a view for the good of everybody and organize it properly. I don't know who does that.
Yeah, who's going to do that?
How you do that, but that's really because nobody's in charge, and these guys are competitors, right? And the competitors are always angling for their advantage over the other person. And there's no incentive for the common good, no matter what anybody says. There's nobody that's sitting there saying, what's right for everybody? It always ends up, what's right for me? And in a system like that, you got what you got.
So we talked about college sports. The other big story in the last year that we've covered very closely at FOS is the rise of women's sports. And there's so much growth there. I mean, they just had a blowout year with more eyeballs, more attention, more cultural awareness. Do you see interesting investment opportunities in women's sports?
Well, 100%. I started watching this a couple cycles ago in the Women's World Cup and the Women's European Football Championships, where if you go back, it's really grown in interest in terms of attendance, sponsorship, television ratings, real success. When you look at Wembley Stadium last year, it had 80,000 people for a women's soccer game. I mean, it's just going on. Now that's caught wind over here in America with the NWSL. They had a really good TV deal. The franchises have gone from 10 million to 250 million.
Yep.
What's gone with their own in Kansas City, have their own stadium, and it's great. It's great. And then, women's basketball. The ratings they got last year for the women's basketball finals was amazing. The WNBA really has a tailwind. Even women's professional hockey, I think the ratings have been good. The attendance, they average like 7,000 a game in their second year. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a real traction with women's sports in a way that there hasn't been before, which will be good. It's good for sports. It's good for the industry. It's good for everybody.
Yeah. You mentioned the Women's World Cup and NWSL. You guys also have seen a lot of opportunity with soccer. Recently bought and bundled together a bunch of soccer agencies and launched a new soccer agency kind of network. Talk to me about that. Why that business?
Well,
representation.
When you look at these athletes, when you look at Ronaldo and Messi with 500 social media users, athletes today, because of media fragmentation, have so many opportunities. So I thought that was a really interesting space for us to play in. With Brewan, with our global footprint, our football agency works in 34 countries around the world, and that fits really good with Bruin's network. So we could add a lot to the network. But look, and you go to many countries in Germany, the top 3 sports are football,
yep.
right? And we have a cool company called Playgreen that has 530 football clubs as clients where they light the pitch. And we can we can predict when the moss is going to grow and what's going to happen with the surface. So, the soccer/football industry, it has a lot of applications. We do a lot of work with Serie A and La Liga with TGI. So we're in the football business in a lot of different ways.
You're right to call it football. I'm over here saying soccer.
Yeah, I know.
You mentioned briefly your time at IMG, and before that you were COO at NASCAR. It's funny, just last week we ran a story about NASCAR's viewership numbers, and the headline we went with was, NASCAR is much bigger than you think, because a lot of people just don't realize the size still and the audience for NASCAR. Have you kept an eye on that, and how do you feel NASCAR has grown in the intervening years?
I think NASCAR is very strong, strong across the country. They have fans in all jurisdictions. When I was there, and I think they're probably not totally dissimilar, there are C and D counties in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont, right? And it's beyond C and D counties, of course. It's in A and B, but that product resonates with consumers all across America. And I think you look at NASCAR as embracing streaming, so exciting times ahead for them.
But F1 has had a ton of momentum thanks to a streaming show. Thanks to Drive to Survive on Netflix.
A company we're an investor in, Box to Box, Drive to Survive. It's storytelling, and the guys at Box to Box are fantastic storytellers, and I think they were able to open up the world to what goes on besides just cars going around in a circle. There's a lot more that goes into it from the human and racing standpoint. And of course, Formula One. I always remember years ago when I left NASCAR and went to IMG, I was in Allianz in Germany, and went to CMO, and I'm like, why do you spend all that money in Formula One? And he said to me quick, he goes, you give me one sport with one buy, I get the world.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? Because the World Cup's every 4 years, the Olympics every 4 years, or every 2, depending if you want to put the winner. And you do have tennis, but Formula one buy, I get the world. It's affluent, better educated, and there's something about racing that's kind of cool, right? At least I think so.
I got a couple more for you. You've done so much in sports investing. I mentioned Bruin started in 2015, so it's been 10 years of you doing this. We've talked about the rise in stakes in sports teams, that everyone now wants a stake. not something you've done yet. Is that on the roadmap? Are we going to see you buy into a protein?
Yeah, I think, for Bruin, we'll stay focused on investing in high cash flow, low CapEx, high cash conversion businesses with what I'd call typical private equity returns. And so that's not a team investment. A team investment is, less risk, probably lower return, lower liquidity, longer hold, different type of added value. You're really not going to add value. So they're different. You have a venture, you have private equity, you have a team. So right now for us, I think at Bruin we'll stick to what we know.
People like that lower risk though, if it's the big three.
Look, there's not a lot of risk to it, and it's proved very durable over 30 years. So it's a great investment, right? And that's why if it's a great investment with low risk, you have lower returns because the risk is lower. People accept those returns. Yeah, it's probably a 10 to 14% IRR, right? Return for a team or league. So, but there's very low risk.
I like to end on this. We're talking about investment in sports and, strategies and portfolio. We're talking about things that have gone right for you. What has gone wrong? Talk to me about a few failures or investing missteps over the years.
Things that have gone wrong. I think sometimes, we invested once in a technology that we thought was going to be super and it wasn't. We had some starts and stops in streaming. One time we had a company that did the NFL games, and 9 games on a Sunday afternoon went dark for 90 minutes. That was pretty tough. So, we've had our challenges, but I always say that, we're operators and we're at our best at that when those things happen because we know how to handle problems. We know how to handle crises. We're really good guys to be around. And I tell people, I've failed miserably. I've been fired by a client. I've missed my budget, right? So when things go bad, I'm a good guy to hang around with because I've been there. We know what we're doing and we help people. And I think if you talk to the CEOs that we've worked with at Bruin, they would echo those sentiments. When things go wrong with us, we're at our best. And really, I think in business, you never get credit for it, but some of your greatest things is when you play defense. And when you play defense and the puck doesn't get past the goalie, that's a big deal, right? And so I think we're good in those situations. Obviously, it's more fun on the revenue side, opening markets and introducing people, and we have a great network for that. But I really think it's dealing with the problems that is what separates kind of sometimes winners from losers, right?
Crisis response.
Yes.
George, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Fun.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.